Alright, so in this video we're showcasing the Davinci Resolve SuperSpeed editor that we put together in the previous video. And yeah, if you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out. There was some very positive stuff about it. I'm really happy with how the channel has been growing recently as well, so thank you for that. But basically, we took the speed editor, removed the control dial, added some customizable buttons, because that is the main complaint that a lot of people have about this edit panel, so to say. And the design philosophy around it is really kind of ragdolling my hand and seeing where it's placed, right? So it's resting on these fingers, on these buttons, and you can then scroll through the timeline with your pointer finger. This is the way that I like to edit. Maybe your edit style is different, but then you can kind of learn from this and maybe design your own panel. Now, just to give some backstory as to why my edit style is so different, I come from the Adobe suite, so I use the Loopdeck CT. And the Loopdeck CT doesn't have an integration for Davinci Resolve because Davinci doesn't allow them API access, which I think is, is a bad move from Davinci, as their edit panels aren't suited for most edit styles. So their speed editor really makes you slow down, and that isn't bad for a lot of applications because it does improve the edit, but for content creation, that is not really, that's not great because we don't have a lot of time. Now, this edit panel is really made to be implemented into a desk setup, so flush mounted into a desk setup, which is not how we're using it today because I'm still building that setup. If you're interested in seeing how I implement this into, a concept desk, then definitely, consider subscribing. That's a pretty awesome video that's coming out pretty soon. Yeah, let's just get into it. So I rest my fingers like this. My pointer finger is on the control dial, and we can scroll through the timeline. I allowed access to the buttons that we can't remap with my thumb. So let's say we want to trim the out point over here so that it skips this last sentence. We can do that. Ripple delete is under my middle finger, so we can select this part and then ripple delete it. As you can see, I had a misclick over there, and that is a problem with the the Elgato Stream Decks, where the buttons sometimes kind of angle. And yeah, that's kind of a consideration you have to make if you want to go with Elgato or not. The reason I did go with Elgato Stream Decks though is because I already had one. And also I wanted this to be quite simple and also very advanced. So there's a lot of advanced macros we can do with the Elgato Stream Decks. But also there seems to be this integration that might be coming out for the iPad. And the main reason I switched over to Davinci was because editing on the iPad is really awesome. So that would be really cool if we can one day connect this to the iPad. Not sure if that's ever going to happen, but that is the reason why I use the Stream Decks. The same goes for the trim out button. Now this one is a little further out, so it is, your hand is kind of stretching a little bit. What I do want to do is replace these buttons with, metallic switches, for example. And the mount for the switches on these things is exactly the same as any keyboard, so I could also just plug in, the switches I get off my keyboard. But yeah, that's an upgrade I have planned so that you can actually feel like, okay, which one am I pressing without actually looking at the keyboard. So we can do the same here for the, trim in, get rid of some excess over here, and then ripple delete with the hand over here. Now, as you can see, my hand is kind of, stretching. This is just for the video. You normally, have it angled slightly like this, so that's nice and comfortable to hold. And I didn't really explain this in the beginning, but my edit style is also based around how I game, so to say. So my hand is on my mouse, and that hand never leaves the mouse. Now, I do see this video more as an open discussion, by the way, because I've only switched to Davinci Resolve about a month ago. So if you have any suggestions on features that you think are useful for the Stream Decks to be implemented into, then definitely let me know in the comment section as well. So of course we also have a slip source, which is something I use quite often actually. Just, hold it, move the control dial, and then we can slip the entire clip. So this doesn't ruin your timeline, right? So it's very, very useful to have. The close-up button is something I use quite often as well, and that's also something that can't be remapped. But this is mostly because I shoot in 6.2K, and so I have a 2:1 aspect ratio, which means that there's quite a lot of room to the top and to the bottom of the frame. And this is really what I use to reframe the footage so that it's nicely composed. Now, it would be really useful to have that also mappable to the Stream Deck, so to say, because that is quite a reach. And then I do have to look down at the keyboard. As for something I use quite often in my content creation process, for example, here we have a little bit of a voiceover, and you can see that the audio levels are quite low. So let's say I selected this with split keys. I can hit normalize audio over here, and then it immediately pops up the normalized audio levels. On my loop deck CT, I actually made a macro which also immediately hits enter, which I'm also planning to do on this one, so that you don't even have to move your mouse over to click normalize. It just does that automatically. So I'm not entirely sure if I explained what my thumb is doing, but that is resting on the split key. So that would be insert edit on Premiere Pro. As you can see, it just makes a curved arrow over there. And with my middle finger, we can just ripple delete that. And this is really useful for talking head videos. When you make a mistake, for example, like I just did, we can hit that split key, go to this part of the section, and then ripple delete it. And that's pretty quick in, taking out errors, that kind of stuff. We can also use my ring, this finger, and that is resting on this middle button over here. That is ripple from start. So it's going to ripple delete everything up until the playhead from this point over here, which is also very useful to have. Now, something that's more personal to me is retime controls, because in my videos, in my build videos, I often have time lapses of, building stuff or like 3D modeling, and I map those to my thumb. So those are at the bottom right over here. This is open retime curve, and this is opening the settings, I suppose. I'm not entirely sure what these are, but you can add the speed point over here, and then just up it like so. Give it a little bit of a... and then you'll see that it speeds up the clip right over there, which is way faster than it was in Premiere Pro. And also in Premiere Pro, you'd get a lot of issues with audio stuff. So the audio would just unlink and still be in that position, which was really annoying. Now, something I also have set up on the Stream Deck Mini is the spacebar, so you can start and stop the playback, which is right next to the split key. I personally don't use this, but this might be useful for you, because I use my middle mouse button to start and stop the playback, which is also quite useful. And then these buttons are set to the previous edit point and next edit point, which is really quick, because then you can go to a specific edit point and use the trim in button to trim the in, ripple delete. And as you can see, you can really quickly go through the timeline and basically KYD, right? Kill your darlings. So something I'm also using quite a lot is the transition duration setting right over here. So that's the key on the speed editor. I'm not sure if you can remap that actually. It would be really handy if you could remap that. But then you just hit it, and then you can adjust the cross dissolve that's on this clip, for example. And then when you double tap this key, it resets the preferred transition duration, so that if I apply a new transition to this clip, it's going to be the same size as this one. And let's say make it even smaller, double click it, just get rid of this one. Oh yeah, we can do that with the cut key as well. So let's go over here and hit cut, and then it gets rid of the transition over there. But then we re-add it, and as you can see, it's the same length as this one. Now, if we had a lot more confidence in this project, I would have probably soldered wires onto the PCB, and in that way, like, remapped buttons. I'm not entirely sure if that would work, but that's a pretty dangerous procedure, because then you can just burn out the components on the PCB, and yeah, it would end up in kind of a mess. But one of the buttons I would really like to do that for is audio level. So when you hit that button and you hover over a audio clip, let me just go to somewhere where you can see that. It just adjusts the audio level, and that would be really handy for my content creation process, because sometimes I'm working with drills and that kind of stuff, and the audio levels are quite high, so I kind of need to dull those down. And I do have specific channels set up for those scenarios, but it would just be way faster to go through the timeline and just do it like so. Now, I do believe Davinci Resolve also adds panels for the Fairlight thing and that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, I don't have the space for those massive panels, and also the content creation process shouldn't be that difficult, right? All those panels are really made for the production of movies, for example, and not really centered towards creators. Now, something I am quite sad about as well with the speed editor is the ripple delete key over here is way more useful than the ripple delete I have set up. So throughout the video, you've seen me like select a clip and then hit ripple delete, which takes one extra step, right? If you use the ripple delete key on the speed editor itself, the only thing you have to do is hover over it with the playhead and hit that key, which doesn't work with the ripple delete I have set up over here. As you can see, it doesn't do anything. You really have to highlight it and remove it. So that's really, that sucks. I wish that was different. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, leave a sub, and see you in the next one.